It's the Unhappy Hour.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another action-packed another action-packed, fun-filled episode of The Unhappy Hour here on the NewAmericanMedia.com, part of the TNAM radio network, because the news always matters. I'm your host, Brian Engelman. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just about a week and a half away from celebrating our 3-year anniversary. What do you give somebody for a 3-year anniversary? Let me look that up. Anniversary present by year. Let's see if Start Page is going to help me out here. Anniversary gifts by year. Ooh, by Hallmark. What do they say? Okay, here we go. The first anniversary, you're supposed to give us paper. Ooh. Or in the modern era, you can give me a clock. So if you've liked the New American Media for a year, we'll take some paper or a clock. Oh, does this segue perfect or what? Traditionally, for a second-year anniversary, you can provide cotton. Yes, cotton. Or, in the modern era, you provide China. And the cotton t-shirts and the paper and the clocks are probably all made in China. But for the third anniversary, it says traditionally you're supposed to give leather. Or in the modern era, crystal or glass. Leather! That reminds me, because I went out to Nevada. I covered the story of cattle rancher Cliven Bundy. You may have seen the viral video of the ranch riot. You may not have. You might have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. Please do me a favor. I won't bore you with the details, but we were probably one accidental discharge away from the Second American Revolution last week. Americans were pointing arms at other Americans for about an hour, and the Bureau of Land Management stood down. I went out there with the New American Media correspondent Blake Wally, another radio host as well. I think we're going to get a live remote from him. He's on the scene again right now over in Nevada, about an hour and a half north of Las Vegas. But that's where we were last week. I want you to check out the coverage that we had. And I think what we have is the most comprehensive Bundy Ranch coverage out there. If you go to thenewamericanmedia.com and click on the very headline page, you're going to see all of our interviews with the woman that was thrown to the ground, one of the guys that was arrested and had his face smashed into the ground and had a boot stepping on his head. We're going to talk with Pete Santilli, the radio host that filmed the ranch riot that kind of sparked the national outrage. About 1.3 million people have seen it now. But yeah, I won't bore you with the details here, but I am encouraging you to check it out. It's at thenewamericanmedia.com. You can check it out on Facebook, and please like our Facebook page. Do a search for The New American Media with spaces in between, and like the page. On Twitter, it was blowing up on Twitter. We were there live. We were taking pictures. We were interviewing people. And it's the quickest way to get in touch with anybody. So make sure you're following us on Twitter. We're at American_media_. And on YouTube, youtube.com/The New American Media. We also interviewed one of the Oath Keepers. Really, it's a very complicated, complex story. We'll talk about it on Agree to Disagree. But right now we're going to talk about the unhappy. I'm going to shift over to just a little something different to take my mind off this. Because it's intense. You know, you go out there and you're covering a story and everybody's walking around with guns, which didn't make me uncomfortable the least, because I'm cool with that. I feel more comfortable when the people around me are armed, personally. But yeah, we were there Thursday, we were there Friday, getting interviews and covering the situation as it developed, and then Saturday, all hell broke loose. I mean, you had snipers that were on bridge overpasses aiming at these Bureau of Land Management federal agents. It was one mistake away from that end scene of Inglourious Bastards. Remember that one with Tarantino? Anyway, so, to decompress, I just want to talk about a little bit of basketball. May I digress? But yeah, I just found it interesting that our third-year anniversary is leather and we were covering the Bundy Ranch with their cattle and all the dead ones that were killed by the feds. Anyway, I just want to jump into it right now. NBA scout Zak Baris, lifelong Cleveland sports fan. Just bring him into the program. It's been maybe it might have been a week or two since we've had Zak on. I'll tell you what, that's just too much time. Too much time.
Hello?
Zak, it's Brian. Welcome to the Unhappy Hour. You're live on the air, sir. How you doing?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
Oh, Lord almighty, living the dream. I just told people that I was out at that cattle ranch dispute getting interviews and footage last weekend, so my brain's still a little scrambled.
Were you actually there?
I was actually there. You can check out all the coverage on our website, brother.
I will. I will. I had no clue.
Yeah, I interviewed all the key players. The one that filmed the video, the woman that was thrown to the ground, the one of the sons that was arrested and had his face smacked into the ground. They had First Amendment zone set up 3 miles away that we all
Were you
laughed at.
protesting too?
I was covering it. I was covering it for the New American Media. I was just doing independent journalism, and you know, that's kind of what I think calmed the situation down, was everybody there with cameras. You know, it's real easy to be tough when you think no one's looking, but now that you're under scrutiny, you could be going to jail if you screw this up, and people act differently when cameras are on them. So
I understand. It's a totally different scenario, and I've been watching a little bit on the news. I've just been incredibly busy lately, and I've got finally a few days off here. I mean, still working, but a few days off from traveling before I head out. So I'm going to D.C. on Sunday night, and then I got a meeting there Monday, and then I'm flying off to Florida to Orlando, and then going down to Miami and Fort Lauderdale for another something. So I'm gone, and then I'm straight up to Michigan for my sister's graduation up at the University of Michigan. So
and you're coming to Los Angeles when? When is L.A.?
Hopefully July 4th, and for sure I will be there in September and October.
All right, because we're finally going to meet on hometown turf one of these days, I swear.
Yeah, I will hopefully be there July 4th. I'm trying to plan it out right now. I just got to see what my schedule is, but I will be there guaranteed in September and October, so hopefully July too.
Just to wrap up what I said with the intro, if you were to check out thenewamericanmedia.com, the headline story is what I think is the most comprehensive coverage and compilation of all of the relevant Bundy Ranch stories, our personal interviews, and then probably about 40 links that Blake Wally put on there. He did a lot of research, and if you had some time and were interested, it's all up there. I think it's the most comprehensive one-stop shop to kind of catch up to speed with what's going on with that story. So anyway, I digress. But it's been a long week, man. I'm still decompressing, and man, we got a lot of things to jump into. It has been, what has it been, 2 weeks, 3 weeks since you've been on the show?
3 weeks. Last week I couldn't do it. I was out to dinner, and and like I said, you finally get a warm night in Chicago, and you got to take advantage of it. So it's far and few between. So I had to, and I was going out to dinner. I remember, I think it was Friday night, and there was no way I could have done the show last Friday.
Well, so I think it's been so long that I need to get your quick recap. How significant is it that both the men and the women won the national championships for UConn college basketball? It's been that long since we've talked.
Didn't that happen a few years ago too, when they won, when Trumbull was on the team back in, I want to say 2011? I think the same thing happened.
So basically this happens every 3 years is what you're saying. No big
deal.
Well,
UConn women's team wins every year, it seems to be, and then their men's team wins once every few years. So, yeah, if UConn's men's is going to win, it's pretty obvious UConn women's is going to win too.
Was it a shock,
I
though?
I don't think it's that significant. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, but it happened 3 years ago, I believe. So.
Well, I mean, did you? What kind of chance going into the season and then going into the tournament did you give UConn in the first place?
0%.
Wow.
Maybe 1%.
Wow.
They weren't even on my radar. I didn't even like I said, I didn't do a bracket this year. I was in Canada. I was in Toronto when the brackets were all coming out, and it was the last thing on my mind. Was doing a bracket at that point. It really was the last thing on my mind, and it got to the point where I still have my first round match. I'm sure I predicted, but I mean I would have had UConn going in probably the Sweet 16. I would have had them eliminated. I mean, like I said, they showed me nothing this year where they should have won the national title, but hey. That's the point of the tournament every year. There's a reason why 68 teams get in now. Technically 64, but it's 68. And there's a reason why 68 teams get in, and all of them are supposed to have a chance at winning. All it is about the team who's the hottest. It was the player who's the hottest, whether it was Shabazz Napier, and it gets there.
I guess he was the hungriest. He was the hungriest for the title, right?
Dayton made it to the Elite Eight. So there's a bunch of schools every year. There's these Cinderella stories. I remember when Kent State made it to the Elite Eight. I was sitting there crying when Arizona lost to Wisconsin. I wasn't actually crying, but I was pissed off as can be when Arizona lost to Wisconsin. I was not a happy camper.
Two ways to say the same feeling. Sure.
And I was happy as hell when Wisconsin lost. I hate them so.
Well, no, I was making the obvious Shabazz Napier joke about he was hungriest for it because he was talking about going to bed.
Oh yeah,
hungry.
because he said he couldn't eat. Well, the NCAA has changed that rule, and trust me, I can tell you right now, if a player's hungry at 4 a.m, they're on their own dime. But I can tell you those players were not starving. They were on unlimited meal plans through campus, at least at Arizona. I remember those guys were on unlimited meal plans, and there's places open at 2, 3 in the morning on campus. So if they do need to get food, there is always something readily available for them.
Yeah, and you know, a slight tweak in it to make sure you can. It's just whatever.
I remember. I'll never forget the Highland Market that was open at the University of Arizona. They had all night. They had burritos all night. They were open 24 hours a day. So I know, and all the athletes were in those dorms right over there on that side of campus, on the east side of campus. They had no problem getting food. I used to see Chase Budinger in there at 3 a.m. Jordan Hill. Those guys were always in there at 3 a.m. getting food. The McHale Center had food, not 24 hours a day, but there was food readily available for those kids. So I don't want to hear that they were starving, but I don't know about UConn, but I can tell you in Arizona, none of those athletes were hungry ever.
Yeah, it was a bit of an exaggeration. The NCAA finally moved to tweak their rules, but I mean, you see a bigger thing coming down the road, don't you, Zach? You see with Northwestern
eventually
football.
Eventually, it's going to happen. I mean, eventually, it's almost like there's going to be a strike.
Like nobody will play in college, and then the farm system for the NBA will stop.
Yeah, and I mean,
just...
you'll see universities losing millions, beyond millions. If I were them, I'd say, listen, you get $500,000 over 4 years. That's the max you're allowed to give a player. You want to give that, that's fine. And then the player has to pay for their own school. It's not a scholarship and getting paid because these kids are already on full scholarships. They're getting a free education. They're getting free meals. They get their rent paid for in their houses. They get their cars paid for. Everything is already paid for. You can survive as a student athlete in college at a D1 school on your scholarship. I know because I've seen it. I worked in the athletic department at the University of Arizona. I don't know the exact amount those kids were getting, but trust me, those kids didn't seem to be having any shortage of money problems at school. I'm not saying they were being paid because they weren't. Don't take it for that.
Nope,
but on their scholarship, when they're given a monthly allowance for their house, for their housing, for their cars, for food, everything. These kids are on unlimited meal plans and they get more. So, and you get another $300, $400 a month for food, whatever it is, plus the unlimited meal plan. So that's the point of a scholarship, and these kids are getting something. But, I mean, I understand why these kids are angry. A guy like Johnny Football and sitting there in Texas A&M's generating $20, $30 million revenue off the kid, I'd be pretty pissed off too.
Yeah.
It's not fair, but I don't think these kids, because you're going to have kids, you're going to see schools that aren't able to get athletes anymore. You're going to see the schools like Ohio State, the USC's, the Notre Dames, I don't even know about Alabama. You're going to see schools with big booster programs like Michigan, Ohio State, all those schools
Alabama.
in Texas, bringing all the top athletes in the country. You're going to see smaller schools, not being able to get anyone because these kids are demanding money, and they're like, listen, we can't offer that to you. We can offer you a full scholarship, and that's all we can offer you. Our football program only makes $2 million a year. It doesn't make $50 million like Ohio State does or $60 million. We don't have a $1 billion deal with Nike, and it'll cause Nike to start. Where does it end though? Is the problem is are college athletes allowed to start wearing Nike apparel, or they start allowing them being on TV? I mean, there's no end to this. I don't know where it can go.
Well,
though. I don't.
I was just gonna say, for every one Johnny Football, you got 1,000 no names.
That's the thing. But should Johnny Manziel be able to sign $100 million, or a $30 million contract while he's in college? Tim Tebow? I mean, where does it end? How does this even go about? That's why I don't like even discussing it personally, because there's no end to this argument.
They call it a slippery slope. Once you start, once you take a step in that direction, you're sliding downhill and you can't stop yourself.
Well, yeah, like I said, how much do you pay the kids? I mean, do you pay the kids to start with? Now, do you pay the kids and give them scholarship? Is there a cap on how much you can pay a kid? Is there, like I said, it's a never-ending cycle, and there might be a great college player like a Tim Tebow, who's worth $2 million, $3 million a year in college. He gets to the pros, he's not even good enough to play in the NFL.
Yeah, we beat the Steelers in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm happy about that, but the guy's still
Fair enough. No,
there's a reason why he didn't have a job after he won a playoff game. Everybody in the NFL, I mean, like I said, they were all carried by their defense that year. The Broncos were completely carried by their defense. It had nothing to do. I mean, I couldn't remember how many of those games they wouldn't have even been in, where they had 0 points up until the last 2 minutes of the game. Yeah, he was heroic, and some crazy stuff happened. I'll give him that. And he had some decent throws. But, I mean, he's not the guy you want starting for your team. Especially, I didn't even want him starting for the Browns. I would rather have Brandon Weeden.
Oh, Lord, you're going to enact the Weeden clause?
Ugh, I mean, get me out of that. But, I mean, it was funny last week. I was at a club in Chicago last week, and we leave. We're going to another one, and my buddy said, hey, this is George Whitfield. And I was like, Manziel's trainer? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay. So we were at the same table as him at Underground last week in Chicago. And, I was talking with him for maybe a minute about Johnny, and he's going top 10. He's not falling out of the top 10. So, I mean, had I known, all the mock drafts came out this week about him talking Cleveland, I didn't even bring up the Browns.
Well, you know what? Have you had a chance to see Draft Day with Kevin Costner talking about the
draft?
I
have not yet. I've been so busy. My goal is to see it tomorrow or maybe Sunday afternoon before I leave.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I won't talk with you about it. I'll probably wrap it with you. I'll give a couple of minute overview, my little, I don't know, what do you call it? A film critic, my critique, I guess. Yeah, my critique. I think that's a dumb word. But, yeah, I'll give my synopsis on it later. I won't ruin it. But I'll okay, I won't ruin it at all. But no, I mean, they have Manziel going at number 4, and this is the fun time of the year. Terry Pluto was on. I was listening to him talk with Hugh Hewitt, one of the radio guys out here in Los Angeles, nationally syndicated, and Pluto was saying, yeah, I mean, this is the Super Bowl for Browns fans. This is the best time of the year.
It's our Super Bowl every year. I love the draft. I'm pissed they pushed it back a week, but part of me is happy about it because I have to work next Saturday down in Florida, and I would have missed the draft. So I'm glad they pushed it back a couple of weeks because now I get to watch it.
Well, I want to get to that. Let me backtrack just a couple of steps because we veered into football. We were talking about Johnny Manziel, talking about paying college athletes. Obviously, Northwestern, the NLRB, said that they can unionize. They're going to come up with a vote here. We'll see what happens. I think at this point you almost have to just go ahead and vote for it, even if you don't think it's a good idea, just to say you did. But I want to pull back to the NBA for a second while we're talking about players coming out early. Recently, Adam Silver was saying that setting an age limit of 20 years is at the top of his priority list, saying, quote, we're ready to go. Do you feel this is the number one and most important thing going on in the NBA and the college world right now?
I don't think the 20 years thing is – I don't like the age limit. Here's the issue. 2 years. I mean, maybe 20 years for international players, but 2 years in college. That's what you want to say, because if there's an older player in high, that comes out, I think it should be – well, I mean, actually, I don't – actually here where I'm going to disagree with myself here, because Mitch McGarry went to a year of prep school. He was 20. So, yeah, maybe he does have a point there.
And I guess, so, I mean, was LeBron not ready to play at 18? It sure seems like he was ready.
Someone said the other day, I had a friend, it was actually a couple of weeks ago, said, and I think I even brought this up on the show, and he goes, college players should have to stay 4 years or at least 3. And I go, you do realize LeBron was the league MVP his 4th year in the league and had just taken a team to the championship on his back. That was the shitty team, excuse my language. But he took them completely to the championship and brought him there. And he was averaging almost a triple-double a game. I could not imagine what he would have been doing in college, as a senior in college.
Oh, man. It would have been a traveling circus.
I mean, granted, I think 2 years, but there are some guys, do I think Wiggins should have used the second year of college? I mean, no, because he's a guaranteed top 3 pick in this draft.
Yeah.
But in other terms, saying, could he use another year in college? Oh, definitely. I don't think he's ready for the NBA yet. Now, is his potential sky high? It's off the charts. From what I saw in the Nike Hoop Summit 3 years ago, or was it 2 years ago? I don't even know my time anymore. But from what I saw in there, I think it was 2 years ago, was the most ridiculous performance I had ever seen. I didn't even know I knew who he was. I just hadn't watched him. And I said that night, this kid's the best prospect I've seen since LeBron. Now, has he translated his aggressiveness in the actual games like Kansas? No. He's had some big games this year, but he didn't show it on the national stage. He wasn't Carmelo-esque in the tournament. He wasn't Kemba Walker-esque. And he did not do that in the tournament. He was basically invisible. I think it's going to take him, like I said, I think Carmelo eased into the flow a little bit in the NBA. He was putting up good numbers. They were a playoff team his rookie year. He had a good roster around him. He got acclimated to the NBA very quickly. LeBron was on a crappy team. He was still learning. He had no jump shot. I mean, if you look from where LeBron went shooting under 40% his rookie year to where he is now shooting almost 60%, I mean, he has improved drastically every year. Carmelo is basically taking a flat line where he improved for a while, then he's capped out. LeBron's points may not show up every year because he takes less and less shots, but his efficiency is just off the charts. I mean, he has improved gradually year by year, and same with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant used to be a scorer. Kevin Durant didn't even put up a triple-double until last year, his first time. He didn't have one triple-double. Now he gets a lot of assists. He's a great all-around player. He really is. He's blossomed into a superstar, and he and LeBron, it's him in 1A.
Okay, so who's your MVP this year? Because that's another one of my questions. Is it Durant?
I think you can give it to LeBron again. I think that's fine. I think if you want to go with a fresh start, I don't think it would have. I mean, I think some people would be offended, but I think Kevin Durant's had an amazing year. If you look at Kevin Durant's year compared to his seventh year in the league compared to Jordan's seventh year in the league, Kevin Durant, his numbers kill him. Yeah. His numbers are better than Jordan's his seventh year. They're better than LeBron's. I think Durant winning the scoring title this year, having a huge year, his assists are way up, his rebounds are way up, his defense is much better. I mean, I think at this point, between, like I said, it's all up to the voters. But I wouldn't be upset if it was LeBron or Durant. And I think he's not going to win the MVP award. But another person who deserves votes is Joakim Noah. Since the Luol Deng trade, he has been unbelievable.
Why is that? Is it addition by subtraction? Sometimes just frees up
minutes?
No,
it just might be he became more of a focal point on offense. I think he knew he needed to step up on defense. It was just the way Thibodeau adjusted his rotation. And Joakim, some players, depending on who they're playing with, Luol was a really good fit with the Bulls. It turns out they're better without him now. And, I mean, it was surprising to see that. And Joakim has done a fantastic job this season. I mean, like I said, Chicago has made themselves players next year. When they get a healthy Derrick Rose back, they can go and recruit anyone they want. I mean, like I said, I don't think LeBron's going to sign there, but I think Chicago has a legitimate pitch to get him. I'm not saying he's going to sign there because I don't think he's under. But do I think they have a legitimate pitch for Carmelo next year? Oh, of course. I think it's a very easy recruiting trip. New York has Phil Jackson, but New York cannot improve their roster at all next year. They're sitting on a bunch of bad contracts next year.
Yeah, that's going to take them a minute to cycle through that. Is Mike Woodson
a goner? It's going to take them
until
2015, so you have one really bad year next year again. Is the problem. I don't think Carmelo wants to sit on a rebuild. He said that today. He does not want to sit on a rebuilding team. He's getting up there in age now. He's getting up there to around 30, which it starts where you start to hit your decline. And he's at that point where he needs to look at it and look at himself, look at his career and say, listen, New York is a great place. Chicago is also an incredible city too. It really is. It's not New York and Chicago aren't comparable, but Chicago is an unbelievable city in itself.
Is Mike Woodson a goner over with Carmelo in New York? Reports are saying that he's out.
I tend to think it's going to be Steve Kerr. Now, I could be wrong. I think he's the leading candidate out there. And I think Kerr's a very bright mind. I really do. I think he did a good job with the Suns. He took some risks, but I think he did a good job. And
do you think he's the brightest shining candidate, or you think because he's a Phil guy?
No, I think he's a perfect fit for New York. I think Steve can handle the national stage well. I think he's a very good coach. I mean, I think he's a very good coach. He can certainly judge talent. I think Steve Kerr's a good fit. He knows his X's and O's. He's one of those guys which I think it will be a nice fit in New York. I really do. I would have loved for the Cavs to get him. I think he'd be a good fit in Cleveland too, especially working with Kyrie. But I don't think the Cavaliers have any chance unless Gilbert's going to pony up a lot of money. And if it's me, I'm going to take the Knicks job before I'm taking the Cavs job.
Yeah, and that brings me to another point. It's almost like we rehearsed this prior to the show. Let's talk about those Cleveland Cavs. They started off horrible. They traded Bynum, got Luol Deng. Luol started off great, and then you heard that behind the scenes there was a bunch of friction with Kyrie and Dion Waiters, and then it came out. I don't even know if you and I have talked since, or maybe we did. Okay, since Josh Gordon came out. He's apparently living in the same apartment building or condominium building with Dion Waiters, and Josh Gordon was airing Kyrie Irving drama that he's heard from Dion, and it all got kind of weird with the two biggest Cleveland sports superstars kind of going at each other in a Twitter battle. Just a little ridiculous.
It's immature, but you got to understand these kids are 21, 22 years old.
I do.
They're kids.
I get it.
I got in a Twitter battle with Thurman Thomas the night LeBron left Cleveland. I swear to God, I was sitting in my hotel room in New York at the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan, and he mentioned something on Twitter that just, I don't know, it lit a fire under me, and I said something back to him, and all of a sudden I think we had 10 tweets at each other where we're just going at each other. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I just got in a fight with a Hall of Fame running back who wasn't really even taking a shot at Cleveland. It was just the fact that he wrote it, and I was so pissed off. I got in a fight with Thurman Thomas on Twitter. I will never forget that. I wish Twitter would let you go back, because I wish I still had those conversations.
They won't let you go back that far?
If you can get back that far, please do. I'd love to see it. I couldn't physically get back there to go see it. I couldn't.
All right. Well, that just
if
Thurman Thomas.
Back, please find it to me. Take a screenshot and send it to me, because I'd love to see it. Because like I said,
okay.
I admit I was out of line, because Thurman, what he was saying is he's like, I feel bad for Cleveland, and I was just so pissed off and enraged at that point. I remember I just said something to Thurman Thomas, not expecting him to respond, and he did. So, and then it was back and forth for a while. And it's like, these Twitter wars are just stupid. Kids are being kids, but you have to realize you're a role model at that point, and you're a celebrity and everything in the community. People have Josh Gordon as the star athlete on the Browns. He's the elite receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's the Randy Moss of his heyday at this point. And when the Browns actually get a decent – I'm not even saying it. Brian Hoyer's healthy for a whole season. And the Browns actually do something. They have a ton of talent this year. They really do.
And by the way, the Browns have a quarterback in the movie Draft Day named Brian, who's coming off an injury.
The Browns have, at this point, their holes on defense are an inside linebacker and corner. That's really it they have on defense. You can fill those two in the draft. On offense, you've got a hole at wide receiver. You still have a hole. You've got one small hole in the offensive line. And like I said, bring in another running back in the draft, and you've got your quarterback. You get a decent quarterback in this draft, the Browns have no reason not to win 10 games next year. The AFC North is getting worse and worse. Andy Dalton's very mediocre. Joe Flacco is what he is. I mean, the guy won a Super Bowl, but he showed you last year he's nothing impressive without Anquan Bolden. And Pittsburgh is just declining, I think.
Well, let me bounce back real quick to 2 points. Number one, I'm going to give UFC as MMA a little bit of homework. One of our regular listeners to the program. All right, UFC is MMA, and I apologize, buddy. I do forget your real name. You told me once, but it's a long time ago. We're going to ask you to dig back through Zak's timeline to see the day that LeBron left, the epic Twitter battle between Zak and Thurman Thomas. You're going to be our crack research team. We put the challenge out to you to see if you can find these. So you let us know if you can find those. UFC is MMA. That's his screen name on YouTube. But I want to tell you about my epic Twitter battle. It was when Art Modell died. I got into a Twitter battle with Shannon Sharp. He said something about, how great of a man Art Modell was. And I'm like, you didn't. I said something back, then he said something again, then I went, then he went. It was mostly civil but I just said, don't you dare call him a great man. He might have been an okay guy to you, but he set fire to the hearts of millions of Browns fans.
It's like calling Jim Irsay or his dad a great guy. He pulled the team out of Baltimore, and Baltimore fans should feel the same thing how Cleveland fans felt. This is a team that lost their team, except they lost their team because they couldn't support their freaking team. Baltimore was getting 10,000 fans a game the year they moved. But Irsay was a jerk, and Jim's an idiot too. So, I mean, look at Jim. I mean, Jim's always, talking on Twitter. He's always going off, and then, when he has this whole thing where he's lost 150 pounds over the past year, with his whole drug thing going on. And, the Irsays were always known as the scumbags in the business, at least from Baltimore fans. I'm not saying that as a Cleveland fan. I'm saying that, coming from Baltimore, they hate Irsay. They need to understand where Cleveland's hatred comes from Modell. Cleveland had arguably the proudest fan base in football. They were selling out every game. Modell and his own, Modell's own stupidity and his greed was the reason they lost him. Cleveland offered to build him a brand new stadium in the Gateway District. Brand new stadium. He didn't want it. He wanted to be able to control the boxes at Municipal Stadium. And so when he went to do that, the Indians had already left. He wasn't making any money off the luxury boxes. Modell lost all of his money. Modell wasn't a businessman. Modell's a guy who took loans, to start to buy the Browns, paid people back, which was fine, but it took him a lot. His whole business was the Browns. He didn't have money outside of the Browns.
Right. Yeah, he was not quite a great businessman, so to speak, for all the stuff he had going for him. He eventually had to sell out his shares in Baltimore too. You know, I mean,
well, no, the league required him to do that because once you hit one of the reasons he moved the team was because the league, when you hit bankruptcy, forces you to sell the team. You don't have an option. And the reason he took the $50 million from the state of Maryland was to prevent him from going into bankruptcy again. When he traded Eric Metcalf for Andre Rison is when he went into bankruptcy. And in order to get him out of there, in order from filing with bankruptcy, he needed that $50 million, move the team to Baltimore. It bought him some more time. That's why the NFL gradually over the next couple-year period made him sell the team because he was going into bankruptcy.
Well, let's talk about a franchise that's not going bankrupt. The Cleveland Browns, you know, they do have a little bit of money there.
They've been bankrupt of talent for 15 years, but that's different.
Oh, thank you. I'll be here all week. And by the way, if you want to hear any more of Zak's comedy, you can follow him on Twitter. He's at Zak Baris. That's ZBARIS. No, but let's get back to Josh Gordon, Kyrie Irving real quick, and then I want to kind of get a brief overview of the matchups in the NBA playoffs before we got to let you go, Zak. I mean, what do we make of the Josh Gordon, Kyrie, Dion thing? Because it's starting to become very apparent. It looks like Kyrie's a fantastic player, and then he takes days off. He kind of sulks around. It's like
I've seen him take quarters off, and I've seen him take games off. I'll never forget this year when I was watching a game earlier this year. It was like the first third or fourth game of the year. I happened to be in Cleveland, was at the game, and I was there in Irving. The Cavaliers had a 24-point lead on the Timberwolves in the fourth quarter. Kyrie starts dribbling the ball above his head. They blow a lead, and they almost lost the game. They only won because Kevin Martin missed a three to end it. They won by 1 point. It was one of the most disgusting wins I've ever been in my life, and I'm thinking to myself, I go, you can't be happy about this. It's one of those wins where it's almost rather one of those games where you're down 15 points and make a comeback, and you have a good loss instead of a bad win. And they say no win's a bad win, but that left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
It really did. And there are times where I think Kyrie needs a veteran in that lineup who can help him because I don't think he's mature enough to take on, to handle a team. He's not. It was evident this year. It was very evident that he was not able to take the team under his wings and take that big step. He's not the sixth best player in the NBA. Going into this year, I thought he would make that huge leap. I was wrong. I admit it.
Did you say the sixth best?
Well, according to ESPN, wasn't he the sixth or seventh best player in the league?
Huh.
Wasn't he by ESPN? He was, whatever, somewhere in the top 10.
I mean,
I remember.
The kid
maybe
can ball.
It was sixth, seventh, or eighth.
He can ball when he wants to, but it kind of reminds me of when you watch LeBron in that Celtics series where it's like he's already checked out.
He doesn't care, and that's the thing. It's like, when Kyrie, I think mentally Kyrie checks out of games. I think he's a hell of a talent. He really is. But, you don't see Steph Curry checking out of games early. You don't see LeBron doing it anymore. LeBron's matured. You'll never see LeBron take anything off again. And, like I said, it is what it is. It happened. But the Cavaliers, their roster this year, they should have been a playoff team. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
I admit Andrew Bynum was probably a team cancer. I mean, look how bad the Pacers have been since he got there.
Well, okay, that brings me to another point, though. I've been hearing rumors about the Pacers. Anything you've heard through the grapevine about what's really going on with the Pacers?
I'm curious. Well, I've heard this stuff with Lance Stevenson and, a couple of the guys not getting along. I don't know what you've heard.
Maybe one other player and one other girl.
You can mention it. Was it Paul George and his penis pictures?
If there were. Jeez, am I really going to engage in this type of yellow journalism? No, I've just heard that there was a bit of a love triangle with two players on the team.
Who was it?
I'm going to leave it at that right now.
You can mention to see who it is.
His name was not Delonte. I can tell you that much.
Well, you can mention his name. I haven't heard anything about it. I mean,
okay, then let me just back away real quick. But you can tell though the Pacers are not the same team they were when they were
they're
firing
not the
on all
same team.
cylinders.
I don't know if it has to do with Lance Stevenson and George Hill or with Paul George, who it has to do with. But is one of the guys Lance Stevenson?
I can neither confirm nor deny such things on air, but we'll talk off air.
Okay.
No, but
just text me.
Yeah. But so what do we think's going on? A team like the Pacers, are they going to really get challenged in the playoffs at all?
I think they're going to be. I don't know if they're going to challenge Miami. The Spurs held in the other night when Miami beat the crap out of them.
Yeah. Well, Miami's kind of been holding it in.
I mean, if it's up to that series right now, if they played right now, Miami would win that in 4 or 5. It's not even a close one. Miami's going to steamroll through the East this year. They're going to steamroll through the East, and they're going to get Oklahoma City or they're going to get San Antonio in the West. Or maybe the Clippers even. But I think it's going to be Oklahoma City or San Antonio.
Oklahoma, San Antonio, maybe the Clippers, not so much
I
Portland,
think it's
Houston.
Oklahoma City or San Antonio versus the Miami Heat. And bearing some unforeseen injury, I don't see any way the Heat don't get to the championship. Unless Indiana suddenly miraculously recovers. Right now they're looking at a first-round exit with the way they've been playing. Evan Turner's been terrible there, which I've honestly been kind of shocked. He's been terrible. He's averaging 6.5 points a game. And it's just been a complete mess over there. It really has been. Who would have thought the year what they were having? I thought they were going to wind up with 60. I thought they were going to wind up with like 62, 63 wins. Instead, they're a 54-win team. They won 17 games after the All-Star break. I think they were below 500.
Do you think it's a chemistry issue with them?
Or they were like 500 basketball, and they were playing decently. I really don't know what the issue is. If you're not sitting in their locker room, it's really tough to tell. You know, you hear rumors, but if you're not in the locker room, it's really tough to tell. Sometimes guys get tired and they just want to coast into the playoffs. It happens too.
And just get fresh and get their head right and get ready to.
That's another
really
thing that happens too. I mean, you've watched it happen with Miami 2 years in a row where they coasted in. They got tired at the end of the year. They said, okay, we're going to rest our guys. You know, we're not going to give it 100%. We have no need to. And we're going to just blow everyone away in the playoffs. And they've done just that. But I don't think I think Indiana honestly is having chemistry issues. I really do. With Miami, I don't think they're having any. I think Miami is as fluid as they can be. And like I said, they haven't played great down the stretch this year. Wade hasn't been healthy, but he's never healthy. But, you know, LeBron tends to turn it up in the playoffs every year. Wade seems to turn it up. And, you know, some of the role players do. But like I said, I don't think Miami's a given to win the title this year. I think Miami's a given to get to the title. But I don't think they're, you know, like I said, Ray Allen and Batty haven't been performing as well as last year. They had some huge performances from Mike Miller last year in the playoffs, which you know, he's gone now. So that remains to be seen. It really does.
Who's the Mike Miller of this year for the Heat? Will it be Greg Oden?
If there's going to be a Mike Miller this year, it's either going to be Batty or Ray Allen. Someone to step up and drain the crucial three in the playoffs. Or even Mario Chalmers or Norris Cole.
Norris Cole. What a blessed life that boy has led. Just jumping down. I mean, to put him on just a normal NBA team, I couldn't really imagine all that much success. But he's really thriving down there. But he's a
solid player. He really is a solid player. I've always liked Norris. I thought he went way too low in the draft. I was surprised he fell all the way to Miami, and I remember being pissed off on the show when I was talking.
I remember that too. What was he? Number 29 or something he went to?
Number 29 or 30. I was like, you have to be kidding me. I was literally, they just landed Norris Cole. Like, he's a perfect fit with them too.
Well, okay, so you see them coasting in, and unless the Pacers get their act together, good luck. I mean, so if we're talking about the Hawks, if we're talking about the Nets and the Raptors and the Bulls and Wizards, not too much going on there, right? None of those teams stand a chance to.
Like you said, well, the Bulls. I mean, the Bulls have been playing great basketball. Do I think they could challenge Miami to a couple of games? Yeah, it's going to happen. It's just like they've done the last few years. They could win one or two of those games with ease. Yeah, I won't be surprised to see that series go 6 games. But do I think that any team in the East is really going to challenge Miami if Miami's healthy? No. Like I said, a normal Indiana, if they did the first half of Indiana, I think they would have challenged them. I think it would have been a really good matchup, and I think Indiana could have won it. I said this year I thought they would win it. With the way they played, I don't think they have a chance. Now, I hope they turn it around, but it's not looking likely.
And then out in the West, you're still just sticking with those couple of teams. You really don't think that the Rockets – what about the Rockets? I mean,
I think the Rockets have a chance too, but like I said, I still think the Spurs are better, and I think the Thunder are better.
Okay.
I think the Rockets are one of those teams that could come in if Harden lights it up. You know, and Dwight lights it up too. I mean, go back to playoff Dwight from 4 years ago. He was unstoppable.
4 years ago. Which year are we talking? Is that the one where they ran over the Cavs? The
year they beat Cleveland and went to the championship.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. I appreciate it.
Or that was 5 years ago now. It was 2009.
I know. Way back in the George W. Bush administration.
So yeah, the good old days.
I don't know. Whatever.
So, but no, bring me back to my point though.
We were talking about the Rockets, and then you were saying if we get the old Dwight.
If you get the old Dwight, he's tough to stop. He really is. He's a true baller in his heyday. I mean, look at those teams in Orlando. You almost did a LeBron type thing where, if Houston's 3-point shooters get hot, if Parsons is hot, if those guys get hot at the right time, Houston's going to be a very tough out. But from my perspective, I'm not going to say there's going to be 4 teams. There are 4 teams in the West that can make the championship. There are 4. But I tend to think, I don't think Durant's going to be losing this year, and I don't know if the Spurs are going to be losing this year. I think it's going to be really tough for either one of those to get eliminated. I think that's going to be a great series.
Okay. Any other series that you're really excited to watch, maybe matchups? So Golden State Clippers, Memphis Thunder.
Golden State Clippers is going to be one of those really exciting ones, but I think LA should beat them with fairly easily. Now, like I said, Golden State used to be the most exciting team in the NBA. Mark Jackson's really toned them down this year. And seriously, they're not that fun to watch. They're not this year. The last couple of years have been the most exciting team in the NBA. I loved watching Golden State. They're so much fun. And this year, it's just been boring basketball for them. I don't know what they can do against LA. I mean, LA, now they've got Doc Rivers. I think they've taken it up a notch. Blake Griffin's had an MVP type year. I mean, LA is a real threat in the West. I think they are.
The Clippers, go figure. Who would have thought that 2 years ago?
Yeah, who would have thought 3 years ago thinking there's going to be an LA team in the play? Who would have thought at the beginning of last season, though, that the Lakers would be one of the 3 or 4 worst teams of the NBA? No, if you looked last season and said Dwight, Powell, Kobe, and Nash, I predicted them to win like 68, 69 games.
And the title, if I believe.
Yep.
Same here. I wasn't the only one. I mean, I don't.
I predicted them in 7 against I remember I predicted 7. It was series would go 7 games against Miami last year. I don't remember picking a winner, and I remember saying to myself last year is when that team looked bad at the beginning of the season, I go, they're done, they're toast. They weren't clicking from day one.
Hey, you called the Cavs a train wreck in like week 4,
week
6?
In week 3. When that team was 6-9.
It's like this. It's a complete
I
train
called
wreck
it a train
in
wreck
Cleveland.
and said they're not going to recover.
By the way, for the record, before we get back to the train wreck, it was the 2009 NBA playoffs where the Magic beat the Cavaliers.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, 5 years ago.
Well, I said the end of the George W. Bush administration, so I was clearly off by about a year, maybe a year and a half. So I am correcting myself.
Okay, yeah.
So
Bush was out of office then.
Back to the train wreck. You called it pretty quick. And
yeah. So it was 2009.
Yeah, and then this year the beat up Lakers and the old Nash and Kobe's hurt, and it's like, oh Lord. And then are they going to trade Powell? By the way, who out of all the players that are, I'm going to totally shift gears on that because we only have a minute or two left, and I want to know, do we have as many of the players coming out in the NBA draft from the NCAA ranks that you were thinking of, or do we have more? Or do we have less?
Almost all those guys I thought were coming out are coming out. It's like Stauskas is coming up from Michigan, Glenn Robinson. Both of them I thought were coming out. It remains to be seen, though, with McGarry. That's an interesting one right now, is Mitch McGarry. Will Mitch McGarry come out? Is he, from what I've heard, is he ready? The doctors are telling him to stay. I think he wants to go. The doctors are telling him to stay.
Okay. And so the Cavs, where are we set to pick? Number 9, I believe?
Somewhere around there. If they can land Aaron Gordon somehow, they'll be very, very lucky. Yeah,
because that's what I'm trying to see. Like, are we still going to get a very good player that low? I mean,
if I were the Cavs, I'd want to get Aaron Gordon.
Well, obviously, we know they're going to bring Nick Gilbert.
Nice, I think there's some nice fits for this team. I think Tyler Ennis could be a good fit. I believe that, I believe that Aaron Gordon would be a nice fit. There are some nice players in this draft for the Cavaliers at 9.
Okay. Well, you know what's going to happen? They're going to bring Nick Gilbert in his bow tie, and we're going to get the number 1 pick again. So,
hey, if they wind up with Wiggins, fine. And there's no Chris Grant this year to draft someone weird at number 1.
Okay. Well, we still have the option to pick somebody weird. Just Chris Grant won't be there to be the one pulling the trigger this
time. And 29 other GMs in the league wouldn't have, done what Chris Grant did all these years. So, whether it's picking Waiters at 4 over Andre Drummond, like I said, if you're going to take the safe pick, you take Harrison Barnes with that pick. If you're going to make a risky pick, you don't take a risky pick on a shooting guard. You take it on the big-time center.
The very big boy.
It's something that just never made sense to me.
So, who are your top 2 picks? The entire Wiggins still your number one? You've been calling
It's
him
going to
for
go with Wiggins, and it depends who gets there. It's either going to be Wiggins and Parker, or it's going to be Wiggins and Embiid, and Joel Embiid. It's going to be one of those two.
So then pick number 3 is going to be very strong.
Yeah, you're going to get Parker. I mean, don't forget about Julius Randle. I mean, like, he's another guy that's going to be he can be a potential NBA superstar. He's one of those guys. He puts up 22 and 12 someday. It's not going to surprise me. I mean, if you get Randle and Dante Exum, even Marcus Smart, the top 6 picks in this draft are all going to be studs in the NBA. That's why I think if you land the top 6 pick in this draft, you're fine.
The Cavs are right on the outside looking in. They couldn't suck long enough to get one of those top picks, and they couldn't get it together long enough to make the playoffs.
But they got money in free agency this year. Maybe they turn that draft pick into an asset. From what I understand from what the Cavs are going to do, is that there's a lot of pressure on them to go out and try to sign LeBron James this offseason or bring in someone else.
Well, it doesn't take an NBA scout to know there's pressure to go out and get LeBron James. We all want to go get LeBron.
My guess is that they're going to go and trade the bank. And when I say this, trade the bank, they're going to go and try to give up every asset besides Kyrie Irving they have in order to acquire Kevin Love this offseason. And I think Minnesota's going to jump.
Really? And then what would Minnesota want to achieve out of it long term? Because Love is a stud.
Love is gone after this year.
Yeah, but then would the Cavs only?
He won't be in Minnesota next year.
Would the Cavs only do it if they did a sign and trade? Then you sign him and then
Nope, they're going to take that risk.
Oh God, you're telling me that our best hope as a Cleveland Cavalier fan is to root for the Dwight Howard L.A. last ditch. Please, Dwight, don't leave us.
I think it's a different scenario. It gets Kyrie to sign that max extension. Kevin Love might commit too. It could be a really good. I mean, don't forget the Cavaliers would still have plenty of cap space after going out and getting Kevin Love. The problem is you're going to lose Tristan in a year anyways because some team's going to be stupid and give him $10 million a year.
Hey, but that's
he's not worth $10 million a year.
That's a big if though. If Kyrie re-signs right now, I'm not convinced that his heart's in Cleveland. He's tired of sucking. You see him when he plays in the All-Star games. He lights it up and then he sulks around for a week and a half.
I tend to think, though, if the Cavaliers manage to get Kevin Love, who's very close with Kyrie, they do the Uncle Drew thing together, I tend to think if the Cavaliers are able to get Kevin Love, they will be one of those teams that will have prime talent. Now, I tend to think in order to get Kevin Love, you're going to have to give up Tristan Thompson, you're going to have to give up Dion Waiters, and you're going to have to give up the number 9 overall pick and maybe another future pick included in there.
Wow. That's kind of selling the farm on some magic beans, but
the thing is, you're going to lose Tristan anyways. Is how you have to look at it after next year. This gives Bennett a role to shine in next year, which you have to do. He's the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, you
have to give him his chance. Thompson, you've already basically seen what Thompson can do. He's basically a 12 and 10 guy, and Bennett has higher potential than that. So you have to go with Anthony Bennett as the ladder here. So, the Cavaliers. Maybe it's better by addition, by subtraction there. And by getting rid of Waiters, maybe it opens it up for Kyrie again to play happy, to go out there, and you have Kevin Love. I mean, he could look like a true baller there. Kevin Love could have some huge games. And I also think you need to reevaluate who the coach is, too.
And I think that's a fair assessment. Zach, we're out of time here for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll bring you back on maybe in a week. We'll try not to wait another month or so. We're right in the thick of the NBA action.
Next Friday night I'll be in Orlando, and I'll be in Miami. So you might get me in Orlando because it is East Coast time, so there's a decent chance I will be available.
Rock on. We'll sort it out if we can. I appreciate your time as always. You have a fun weekend this time, sir, okay?
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Take care, Zach. There goes Zak Baris, everybody. Be sure to follow him on Twitter. He's at ZBaris. That's ZBaris. We're going to take a quick reset here, and we'll be right back on the other side. We're going to be talking with Blake, the eccentric Wally. He's live at Bundy Ranch. What does that mean? We'll tell you. Thanks for listening.
Your guide to the truth. TheNewAmericanMedia.com.